Masters of a magic most primal, these witches feel the heartbeat of the very earth. A group shrouded in mystery, they cling to the ancient ways in the face of modernity. Masters of flesh, spirit, and the earth herself. These are the Verbena. The Verbena claim to descend from some of the first mages known to exist, known as the Wick. The Wick were creatures of both spirit and flesh, cultivating and watching over the first human communities before vanishing from the planet. Probably the most famous Wick in the World of Darkness canon is Lilith, a witch who granted the original vampire his powers via feeding him her blood. Around the time of the Dark Ages, the descendants of the Wick banded together under the banner of the Old Faith Fellowship. This was the first major attempt to unite different pagan belief systems and magical stylings. This being the Dark Ages, however, the Old Faith quickly came under fire from the original Inquisition, as well as mages of both the Order of Hermes and the Messianic Voices. This, combined with the Old Faith's already low numbers, meant that the Fellowship quickly died out. Around the time of the 15th century, the technocracy began their own series of witch hunts, led by the Cabal of Pure Thought. Once again, this brought pagan mages together to fight back against those who sought to wipe them out. Leading the charge was Nightshade, a witch who lost her family in an attack by the Cabal. She led the coalition of pagan mages in a war for revenge against the technocracy. Now, that backstory should sound familiar to you if you've seen my video on the Council of Nine Mystic Traditions, as Nightshade was one of the original founders of the Council, alongside Shazar the Seer, the Wizard Baldric the Sel, and the Cleric Valoran. During the Grand Convocation, Nightshade met another pagan mage by the name of William Groth. Despite Nightshade being English and Groth being German, the two quickly grew close through their shared loss and eventually became lovers. When it came time to choose which traditions would represent which seats of magic, Nightshade and Groth formed the Verbena to represent the seat of life. Shortly after the founding of the Verbena, the mages of the newly established council were sent throughout the world to scout other mages to join them. Nightshade went west to Iceland and the Americas, while Groth went east into Asia. While spreading the message of the council to China, Groth died under mysterious circumstances. His death was only discovered by Nightshade, who was in Africa at the time, as she felt it like a pain in her soul. Groth became the first council mage to die for his cause, and is still honored by the Verbena as a war hero all these centuries later. Throughout the next few centuries, the Verbena style of magic slowly began to die off, leaving them as one of the smallest traditions in the council. Things began to pick up, however, in the 1960s, as public interest in the occult began to rise, all thanks to the neo-pagan religion of Wicca. The Verbena took full advantage of this, absorbing the ways of Wiccan magic into their paradigm, and thus making the tradition more accessible to newly awakened mages. After finally opening themselves to the ways of modernity, the Verbena are on the rise for the first time in centuries. Verbena magic draws on various pagan beliefs, with the core tenet being the presence of magic in all aspects of life. Everyone, awakened or otherwise, is flowing with this universal energy, and by tapping into the pure and primordial essence of the universe, a mage can warp the very fabric of reality. Because of this ever-present belief towards magic, the Verbena gladly welcome mortal sorcerers into their ranks. To them, the pulse of the universe can be felt by anyone, so any mortal magician who wishes to may claim membership among the Verbena. In the Dark Ages, the four pillars of the Old Faith revolved around the four seasons. Autumn granted wisdom and insight, winter granted powers of destruction, Spring granted powers of life, and summer granted powers of passion and creation. Verbena rituals and foci are fairly typical of modern-day witchcraft. Daggers, wands, broomsticks, mirrors, and so on. Potions are also a popular method of spellcasting, as the brewing process emphasizes the spiritual aspects of the various plants and herbs. The most powerful sources of magic used in Verbena rituals, however, are bodily fluids, primarily blood and semen, since both carry the very essence of life itself, albeit in very different ways. There are only 4 sub-factions in the Verbena, and they consist of the following. The Gardeners of the Tree, the conservative faction of the Verbena. They cling to the old ways of the tradition, putting a lot of value in family lines and discouraging the mixing of different cultural types of magic. As you can imagine, their ideals have been losing a lot of steam in the modern nights. The Life Weavers, who focus on adaptability and change. The Life Weavers live very solitary lives, familiarizing themselves with the ebb and flow of the earth in order to better adapt to it. The Moon Seekers, adventurous mages who keep an open mind in an attempt to continue the growth of the tradition as a whole. And the Twisters of Fate, who tend to avoid the political aspects of mage life in order to focus simply on making a positive difference in the world. They live simple lives away from the rest of society and oppose the strict and insular rules of the Gardeners. Cabals of Verbena are known as a circle, and largely consist of 13 mages or less. Each circle shares one Book of Shadows, and is usually formed around a single cultural identity. Meetings of the Verbena are known as a Grand Circle, and are mostly held to celebrate the changing of seasons, as well as discuss any important developments in the tradition. And that is the end of this video on the Verbena. Next time, we will move in the complete opposite direction and discuss the clerics of the Celestial Chorus. Beyond that, if you like this video, don't forget that there is a button for that, and please be sure to subscribe if you wish to see more content from me. As always, my name is Lily, and I will see you lovely people later.